Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 4, Text 15. Hamsaguya prayers. This is Srimad Bhagavatam translated with commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And we are hearing about the 10 sons of King Prachinabarhi, and they're referred to as the Prachetas. They had performed great austerities within the ocean. And when they came out, they saw that the planet had been overrun with trees, and as what happens by performing severe austerities, become a little hard or hardened or tough by performing the austerities, stiff, they became angry at the situation, and they started to burn all the trees. They became so angry, and they had become such powerful mystic yogis by performing these severe austerities, that the fire was coming out of their mouth and their eyes, and just from that alone, they were burning all the trees. So the demigod of the moon, Soma, is responsible for seeing that the trees are, and the vegetation is growing nicely. It's a responsible post. A living entity can attain to that. And so that living entity who was acting in the position of Soma, the demigod of the moon, he intervened, and he's speaking to the Prachetas, tried to quell their anger, which is, it must be something like blind rage, because Soma's explaining to them that it's their duty to protect the citizens and engage them properly and not become angry and destroy them all. So now he's trying to get them to stop this rage and anger, and he's continuing to speak to the Prachetas. Text 15. There's no need to burn these poor trees any longer. Let whatever trees remain be happy. Indeed, you should also be happy. Now, here is a beautiful, well-qualified girl named Marisa, who was raised by the trees as their daughter. You may accept this beautiful girl as your wife. So, this is different ways to try to engage everybody. So, maybe they won't be angry now they have a beautiful girl given to them by Soma and the trees. Text 16. Sukadeva Goswami continued. Sukadeva is telling the story to King Parikshit, this pastime. So Sukadeva Goswami is now continuing. My dear king, after thus pacifying the Prachetas, Soma, the king of the moon, gave them the beautiful girl born of Pramlocha Apsara. The Prachetas all received Pramlocha's daughter, who had high, very beautiful hips, and married her according to the religious system. So, the Prachetas are not demons. They're elevated souls. They're not demons. They were angry to see that things were out of order and not the way they should be. But they weren't demons. So they're accepting this daughter of the Apsara, Pramlocha. Text 17. In the womb of that girl, the Prachetas all begot a son named Daksha, who who filled the three worlds with living entities. So now these narrations, they're taking place in practically the beginning of the universe. There was a need to populate the universe with the different living entities. And those persons who were they're called Prajapatis or progenitors, they produced a lot of offspring. That was their service. And so to move this along, to populate the universe, to give conditioned souls the opportunity to engage with their bodies, minds, and senses, to have bodies and minds and senses to engage with, so that they can have an opportunity to act out their desires, not just for the sake of acting out their material desires, but for the sake of getting purified and for becoming freed from them altogether, an opportunity to take to the path of devotional service. So the universe was there, and these Prajapatis were responsible for providing that facility for the conditioned souls. So the Prajatas begot this son, Daksha, who filled the three worlds with living entities. So this is a very unusual birth. It's this, what was her name? Her name was the daughter of the trees, and her name was Marisa. Okay, and she received the semen from the 10 sons of Prachinabarhi. And the combination of that produced this one child, this one son named Daksha. So it's a bit of an unusual conception, conceived a little bit unusual here, according to how we experience things when we look around us. But this Daksha was so empowered to create progeny, it says here, he filled the three worlds with living entities. The three worlds are the upper, middle, and lower planetary systems. That's a vast amount of area to fill with living entities. And we hear here that he filled all of those planetary systems with living entities. Prabhupada's commentary. Daksha was born during the reign of Swayambhuva Manu. Because of offending Lord Shiva, he was punished by having the head of a goat substituted for his own head. Thus insulted, he had to give up that body. And in the 6th Manvantara, called the Chakshusha Manvantara, he was born in the womb of Marisha as Daksha. Okay, so Prabhupada's giving us some history here of how that worked. Daksha had insulted Lord Shiva. He was born during the reign of Swayambhuva Manu, so he appeared earlier, and he was performing different sacrifices, and he insulted Lord Shiva. He saw him externally. His daughter was married to Lord Shiva, and she took it as an insult to her, to talk to her, to treat her husband like that. Such a great soul, Lord Shiva. So Daksha was very foolish like that and puffed up. Now these aren't demons. They're empowered living entities, and they're conscious of Lord Vishnu to one degree or another. But because of their contact with the material energy, sometimes they get very bewildered, and they have a false sense of prestige. Their false ego gets inflamed. So Daksha had become victimized by that, obviously, to insult Lord Shiva. He saw him externally. He didn't like what he saw, that Lord Shiva was in charge of the lower species, the demons, the ghosts, the hobgoblins, but Lord Shiva is not in that category. It's like Yamaraj. He supervises the hellish planets, but he's not a hellish personality. It's just his service. Someone has to do it. So Lord Shiva, something like that. But Daksha was very unhappy that his daughter was married to someone who was in that situation, although Lord Shiva's said to be the greatest devotee of the Lord. He's actually an expansion of the Lord. He's unique. He's in a unique position. It's said that Lord Shiva is like yogurt compared to Krishna himself, who was like milk. So he's a very exalted personality. He's Krishna himself, just transformed slightly. So because he insulted Lord Shiva, then the followers of Lord Shiva attacked the servants and the priests and the Brahmins that were at Daksha's. He was performing a big sacrifice, and there was a big melee. They were fighting each other and hurling insults. It became a mess. And so finally Daksha was beheaded by one of the followers of Lord Shiva. And to bring him back, they put a goat head. So he had a goat head. And at that point he realized his mistake. Took a lot to bring him. They say sometimes an addict, someone who's addicted to some material substance, maybe a drug or an alcohol or overeating, or sometimes people are addicted to illicit sex or pornography, whatever they're addicted to. And they said that they have to reach the bottom sometimes before they realize a mistake. They spiral down to the very worst possible outcome. And sometimes people die and they never realize it. They have to, in the next life, get a chance to realize the mistake for material addiction, what it does, where it leads. So this false ego and this false pride is a kind of addiction also. So Daksha had to see where that took him. Took him all the way to getting a goat's head, losing everything and getting a goat's head. Oh, then he understood. Oh, you don't insult and offend a Vaishnav like Lord Shiva. So that was that birth. And then, so he ended up at the goat's head. But then in the 6th Manvantar, he was born of the womb of Marisha as Daksha. So this is the Daksha. This is the birth of Daksha now that we're hearing about. Born from the 10 sons, the union of the 10 sons of Prachanabarhi, the Prachetas, and Marisa, the daughter of the trees. So, in this connection, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quotes, quote, his previous body had been destroyed, but he, the same Daksha, inspired by the Supreme Will, created all the desired living entities in the Chakshusha Manvantar. So the living entities didn't come until the 6th Manvantar. So they came a little bit later, but this still goes way back, way back, way back to actually the beginning of the creation. Just it wasn't right away. It was a little bit on. It was on the 6th Manvantar. Thus, Daksha regained his previous opulence and again begot thousands and millions of children to fill the 3 worlds. Okay, so it wasn't till a later birth, after the goat's head. Text 18. Sukadeva Goswami continued, Please hear from me with great attention how Prajapati Daksha, who was very affectionate to his daughters, created different types of living entities through his semen and through his mind. Prabhupada's commentary. The word Duhitra Vatsala indicates that all the Prajas were born from Daksha's daughters. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that apparently Daksha had no sons. He had no sons. So we're going to see who the daughters united with. Get a little genealogy here. And this is our history. I mean, this is where we came from. This is our very distant relative. Hare Krishna. I mean, this goes way back, you know. We might have access to a little information about a grandfather or a great-grandfather. Sometimes, even a great-great-great-grandfather tends to get lost. Our genealogy tends to get lost, our family tree. But this is our family tree. We are the generations coming from Daksha. I mean, where else did we come from? He's populating the 3 worlds. So this is we're hearing about our great, oh, so great, grandsire, Prajapati Daksha. Text 19. With his mind, Prajapati Daksha first created all kinds of demigods, demons, human beings, birds, beasts, aquatics, and so on. Now this is a powerful living entity. First he created them with his mind. He conceived them in his mind. Okay, so that's how it works. First he conceived of it, thinking. He thought of these living entities, their forms. Incredible creative ability. He conceived of demigods, demons, human beings, birds, beasts, aquatics, insects, everything. He did that with his mind first. Text 20, but when Prajapati Daksha saw he was not properly generating all kinds of living entities, he approached a mountain near the Vindhya mountain range, and there he executed very difficult austerities. Now, this is his service, and he's doing what he needs to do his service. He felt he wasn't properly generating the different living entities. So he began to perform austerities, very difficult austerities. Let's continue on. 21. Near that mountain was a very holy place named Agamarshana, and there Prajapati executed ritualistic ceremonies and satisfied the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari by engaging in great austerities to please Him. See, there's a time and a place for austerities. If austerities are performed to get a high position or to go to a heavenly planet or for anything other than simply to please the Lord, then those austerities are a waste of time. But if someone is performing austerities to please the Lord, to please Krishna, see, Daksha felt he wasn't doing his service nicely enough. He wanted to be empowered to be able to do it nicely. And where's he going to get that empowerment from? From Krishna. He wants to serve Krishna. He sees that he wants to do his service for the Lord. He sees that he's not doing it very nicely. So he wants to do something so that he can improve his service. And for him, he began to perform these austerities to please the Lord, and the Lord was satisfied. He performed ritualistic ceremonies and great austerities. But to do them for material advancement is useless. It's like eating. We don't not eat, but if we eat for Krishna, we eat Krishna prasadam, then Krishna is pleased. So everything can be engaged in the service of the Lord. According to Daksha here, even ritualistic ceremonies, sacrifices. It's not recommended for this age. For this age, the austerity is the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. And that's the austerity for this age, the Sankirtan Yagna. And within the Sankirtan, there are also sacrifices that are performed. There's meditation that is practiced. The deities are worshipped. But the actual sacrifice for the age that pleases the Lord is when all of these things are done to please Him within His Sankirtan movement. So we can see the essence or the principle here that's being illuminated. Because in the last few chapters, all we've been hearing is, for I don't know, so many verses, and in the Prabhupada going into great depth to elaborate on how useless it is to perform ritualistic ceremonies and austerities without Krishna. But here we see Daksha performing ritualistic ceremonies and austerities for Krishna. And Krishna was pleased. Krishna is pleased by that. Text 22. So Sukadev continues, My dear king, I shall fully explain to you the Hamsaguya prayers which were offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead by Daksha, and I shall explain how the Lord was pleased with him for those prayers. It is to be understood that Hamsaguya prayers were not composed by Daksha, but were existing in the Vedic literature. Yeah, he didn't create anything. He was offering prayers that are found within the Vedas. So let's continue on here. Text 23. Prajapati Daksha said, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental to the illusory energy and the physical categories it produces. He possesses the potency for unfailing knowledge and supreme willpower, and he is the controller of the living entities and the illusory energy. The conditioned souls who have accepted this material manifestation as everything cannot see him, for he is above the evidence of experimental knowledge. Self-evident and self-sufficient, he is not caused by any superior cause. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Prabhupada's commentary. The transcendental position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is explained herewith. He's not perceivable by the conditioned souls, who are accustomed to material vision and cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead exists in his abode, which is beyond that vision. Even a materialistic person could count all the atoms in the universe. He would still be unable to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Beyond the range of the senses. And also the mind cannot conceive. I say, well, how can he be known? Then how can we know? He reveals himself through devotional service. Hearing about him submissively from self-realized souls who have seen the truth, who have that vision of the Lord, is devotional service. And by hearing like that, by performing devotional service, the Lord is pleased. And he reveals himself to that person who's hearing. The Bhagavad Gita, just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, inquire from him submissively, and render service. He can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. So, Prajapati Daksha is offering these prayers from the Vedas. He's glorifying the position of the Supreme Lord. But there's no other way to know the Lord other than devotional service by which he's pleased and then reveals himself. This is called realized knowledge. That's what it means to realize, is when the Lord reveals. He's revealed by devotional service. So that even if a scientist or a materialistic person could count all the atoms in the universe, and get a computer big enough, right? He would still be unable to understand Supreme Personality of Godhead because he's not known like that. As confirmed in Brahma Sanhita, Pantas tukoti satavatsara sampragamyo bayo atapi manaso munipungavanam sopyastayat prapada simnya vichincha tatve govindam adipurusham tamaham bhajami. Hare Krishna. Lord Brahma's Brahma Sanhita. We only have the 5th chapter. The rest of it's been lost. Oh, how unfortunate. Well, at least we have the 5th canto, and that's verse 34. The conditioned souls may try to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead for many billions of years through their mental speculative processes, traveling at the speed of mind or the wind, but still the absolute truth will remain inconceivable to them because a materialistic person cannot measure the length and breadth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's unlimited existence. If the absolute truth is beyond measurement, one may ask, how can one realize him? The answer is given here by the word Swayambhuve. One may understand him or not, but nevertheless he is existing in his own spiritual potency. Swayambhuve. Let's see what the word for word is on Swayambhuve. Okay, the word for word is Swayambhuve, unto the Supreme Lord who is manifest with no cause. Okay, so to understand him, we have to understand that that's his position. He's the Supreme Lord. He's manifest with no cause. You want to try to understand the position of the Lord? That's it. Text 24. As the sense objects. Okay, this must be Daksha continuing in these prayers that he's offering. As the sense objects, form, taste, touch, smell, sound, cannot understand how the senses perceive them, so the conditioned soul, although residing in his body, along with the Supersoul, cannot understand how the Supreme Spiritual Person, the Master of the material creation, directs his senses. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto that Supreme Person, who is the Supreme Controller. Okay, that is